Hey guys, welcome to Make You Remarkable, a brand new podcast brought to you by Oconee State Bank. I'm your host, JT Tomlin, and on this podcast, we're going to be talking all things leadership, entrepreneurship, and personal development. Our goal is to ignite purpose and inspire passion in our listeners by asking them the question, how will you make you remarkable? We'll be interviewing local legends, business owners, and leaders within our communities and asking them about their road to success. Like, what kind of steps did they take to get where they are now? What does it mean to be a leader? And how can I lead my team? As well as what kind of mark they've made and what kind of mark they hope to leave in the future. This is going to be an amazing podcast, and we cannot wait for you to listen to it. So make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and follow us on social media at Oconee State Bank for more information. Today, I'm joined with Neil Stevens, and we're going to be talking about what it means to make you remarkable and what this podcast is and who it's for. So, Neil, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Neil Stevens, President and CEO of Oconee State Bank, and been with the bank for about 6 years. And what else you want to know?
What's your story? What made you get into banking?
Oh, gosh, that goes back about 32 years. I was a finance major and did not intend to stay in banking. I took a job in banking because my brother was in banking, had a great career in banking, and he suggested that I give it a try and said, there's a lot that I can learn, even if I don't stay in the industry. I can learn a lot about business, and so I did. And, gosh, 33 years later, here I am. I really fell in love with the business, and it was a great story. That was way back in the late 1980s when I began, so.
Wow, and so here you are. You're still here.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long have you been in Athens?
So we came here about 6 years ago. I grew up in Macon and stayed there for a number of years and was transferred to Atlanta with the bank I was with and worked there for about 25 years. And then the opportunity came to come to the Athens area, and that was back in 2016. And so joined Oconee State Bank in October of 16.
Does it feel full circle to have a branch coming to Macon?
It is really cool to see us expand into the Macon market, and that was not part of the original plan. We do everything based on talent and the recruits that we can find, and we had just happened to find an incredible banker in the Macon market, and so that's the reason we chose to expand there, but that was not part of the original plan. But it is cool to go back home and visit my mother and then know that, hey, we got a location here. That's really cool. Like,
Mom, I know the perfect banking for you.
That's right.
You need to go to Oconee State Bank. It's perfect.
No doubt. And the rest of the family, too, and friends.
So what does an average day look like for you at Oconee State Bank?
Oh, gosh, is there an average day? I don't think there is such a thing. But I try to spend the majority of my time thinking about the future of the bank, where we're headed, and to think about the big obstacles that may be in our way and strategically how we navigate those obstacles, and to daily try to cast a vision to ensure that we are maintaining a sound culture in our organization, as well as to ensure that we have the right people in the right seats to get the job done, and to try to be a motivator and to get out of people's way, be a cheerleader, get the right people there, be a cheerleader, and help us, move things forward. So that entails a lot of different things, and that's what I like about my job. There's no single day that's the same. It's always a different challenge.
So you talk a lot about culture and how culture impacts Oconee State Bank. Give us a little bit more insight into that.
Well, culture, I think, is the secret sauce to any successful business. Let's take a bank, for example. I mean, we have the same ATMs as everyone else. We have the same mobile banking platforms as everyone else. We have tellers, they have tellers. We have commercial bankers, they have commercial bankers. Our money's green, their money's green. I mean, there's no real difference. So you start thinking about what makes an organization different and sets it apart. And I'm convinced it's the people you hire. But in order to hire and retain great people, you got to have a great culture. And I define that culture. The word culture can be overused, but I think it's a place that is high challenge, where there's a high standard, but that also embodies very high support, where people are connected, where they care about one another, and fostering a place where a team wants to serve each other. They want to serve each other and the good of the whole, as opposed to being self-serving. There's good cultures in organizations, and there can be very bad, toxic cultures in organizations, and those are cultures that are high challenge, but they're very low support, where everyone's out for themselves, and that's a bad place to be. So I think that's the secret sauce of what we're doing, and any great company that sustains, I think you can attribute it to a great culture.
What keeps it from fading away, or like that initial desire to keep that really great culture, and then all of a sudden it kind of fades off? How do you keep it going?
Well, a culture is nothing more than a reflection of the team that makes up that culture, right? So I think the key there is to hire great people who are engaged, who love their work, and they keep it going. It's not, leadership has to foster it. I mean, that's my responsibility to make sure that it remains sound and that I set the tone. But it's the team. It's people like our marketing group. It's the deposit operations group, the loan operations group, the commercial bankers. I mean, every day them living out or living and working in a way that is selfless and that puts the company first. And if you hire the right people who are engaged and love what they do, and we as a management team foster that, the culture continues to sustain because of the individuals, because a culture is nothing more than it's the sum of everyone that's working there. So,
dang, that's some really good answers.
That's important. I think about this stuff a lot.
No, it's good. It's amazing.
So,
what is the mission of Oconee State Bank?
Our mission is to create remarkable experiences that significantly mark the lives of others. And I think the real key there is marking the lives of others. It's not about us. It's about what we can do to make a difference in the lives of other people. And we feel if we do that we will become essential to the lives, businesses, and communities we serve, which happens to be our actual vision statement, to be essential. And that's to be absolutely needed in someone's life or someone's business. And I think when you create remarkable in such a fashion that it marks their lives, our customers' lives, and our prospects and employees and everyone, then automatically we become essential to them. So,
yeah, I'm looking into that a little bit more. The creating your remarkable or making your remarkable. When you first heard that phrase, when we pitched this idea to you, what were some of the thoughts that were going through your head?
Well, the first thing I thought about was, think about remarkable, and sometimes it can be perceived as we are remarkable. And I think when you think about make you remarkable, it's not about us being remarkable. It's about us fostering an environment where we make a mark on people's lives, and we give the people that we serve the opportunity to make their mark on people's lives. And so it's kind of pay it forward kind of a notion, but it is making an impact in the lives of other people. That's the first thing I thought of, is how do we make a mark and a difference in the lives of others. And that's what this show is really all about, is to highlight individuals and companies and organizations that do that really well.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up. Like we're kind of passing the torch on to other people to share their stories, and we're creating a remarkable culture so that they can see the remarkable experience and then bring that to their communities or to their circles. So why is Oconee State Bank launching this podcast? Like, why should a bank have a podcast?
Yeah, it has to be about making the customer and the community the hero of the story. We want to create an environment here where we can feature those individuals who may be, community members, who may be local businesses, might be customers of ours, that are doing the things you're talking about. They're making their own mark. Well, how do we shine the spotlight on them and make them the true hero of the story? So it's not really about Oconee State Bank and saying how great we are. It's about featuring and highlighting those people that we have on the show and making them the center of attention and creating the spotlight to shine directly on them so that they're the hero of the story. And that's our aim here. There's a lot of podcasts out there today, and we want to do something a little bit unique with a different type of focus. So
yeah, and if you think about it, you've got all of these cultures, if not cultures, like communities where people are striving to kind of make themselves better or really just focusing on themselves, and you have this really one-sided community. But then the second you start doing something like this, where you're encouraging people within the community, whether they be competitors or customers or even just random people within the community, to share their story and to talk about how they're making their mark, you build this 3D community that really is invested in continuing to grow each other. And it's really a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, if we all get stronger and better and we all do this, it just makes our entire community better. And that's the aim.
So who is this podcast for?
Well, I think the listeners of this podcast it really boils down to anyone who wants to be inspired, by what's happening with some of these stories that we'll be featuring with the people that we have on the show. So I would say, business people, leaders in their organizations, those who aspire to be leaders, who want to learn more maybe about how to make their mark in the lives of others, and to learn more about the those that we have on the show, to learn more about their companies and organizations, and hope that they can maybe become part of those organizations in some way, whether it's doing business with them, or maybe if it's a nonprofit, maybe they want to get involved from a volunteer perspective or financial support perspective, those kind of things. So
just everyone. We want everyone to listen.
I think so. I think it will resonate with people, and hopefully it'll spark something in their mind to say, wow, I want to, that's something that I would like to be a part of in some way. And I want to go make my mark. I want to, I've learned something from that show about, gosh, I want to have a different view when I go to work next Monday, to come in and make a mark on the lives of people, as opposed to just thinking about this as, a job, or how do we make a profit for ourselves.
Yeah, making your mark isn't limited to a business owner or an entrepreneur. It's anyone can make their mark, and you want to look at and talk and learn from other people on how they're making their mark to inspire others to go make theirs.
Sure, absolutely. I think even the family. I mean, what are you doing as a parent, maybe a sibling, whatever it may be, to make a mark in the life of your family? What about those organizations that you may serve? Are you doing something there to make a mark and a difference? And I think that's the thing. We think about teachers. This is probably one of the best examples I think about, is everybody remembers those teachers in their lives, in the early years particularly, many of whom did not make, they may have left a mark, but it wasn't a good mark. It was a scar. But then you have those who truly made a mark. And I can remember, a number of people. I remember Miss Scott was one of those who made a mark in my life. And you remember that. I mean, she's now passed away, but I'm still talking about her. And so her legacy lives on. And so that's the heartbeat of this. And I think when you do that with authenticity, the other things that, the profitability and everything else that you need kind of falls in line. And that's why our whole vision, mission, values is built around this whole idea of making your mark. And you think about the word remarkable, it's really doing something worth remarking about. When you think about, what that word really means. And but it can't be about us. It needs to be, we need to turn the spotlight to others.
Yeah, you brought up teachers and how they've made, like those teachers that make their mark on you. It's funny that you brought that up. My teacher, Jackie Kershey, she was my art teacher at Westminster, and she passed away recently, but at her funeral, they talked about leaving your mark. And it was really interesting because really before I came to Oconee State Bank, I'd heard that phrase a couple times, like ad campaigns and all sorts of things, but actually hearing it from a person and realizing, oh, wow, the way that she left her mark on the community was insane. Her funeral, there were so many people. We actually did not have enough room for them to fit in this building. We were at the Botanical Gardens, and the people were standing outside. They couldn't even hear what was going on, but they were just there really grieving her loss because of the mark that she had made on them.
And think about this. It's the multiplication effect. It's not addition. It's multiplying. So if her name was
Jackie Kershey.
So think about if she made a mark on J.T. Tomlin, and then because of that, J.T. Tomlin makes a mark in the life of, X person, and that person begins to make a mark. You have it multiplies, and Jackie's legacy lives on for decades.
Exactly.
For centuries, potentially, because
it's crazy.
She's passed that down, and so that's the cool part.
Like looking at her story and her legacy, like she inspired me to go into creativity and art, and now this is my job, and I'm teaching other people, and then those people are hopefully going to go on and do the same thing.
Yeah, really cool.
It really is looking at creating your remarkable. She's a perfect example of that. And looking at the people within the community, there's hundreds of people doing that same thing. But there's also hundreds of people who want to leave their mark, but just don't know how. So how would you encourage someone who wants to leave their mark, but they're just kind of feeling like they're not really making an impact, or they feel like they're just not, they're kind of stagnant in their mark? Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't think it's something you can force or manufacture. I think you've got to be who you are, and you got to be authentic. The main thing is being authentic and real, and knowing. I think awareness. Being aware of your strengths and talents, and then using those strengths and talents to impact others. And I think there's certain things that I'm gifted at that I can do well. There's other things that you don't want me doing. I can remember our pastor at our old church. He was not very good at visiting people in the hospital and things of that nature. He didn't know what to say, things like that. Certain things he was really gifted at. But he used to say, if I show up at the hospital, he said, that you're in your last days. And he said, but I think if you find those areas where you're really good and gifted, and then look for opportunities to use those gifts to impact others. I think if you're authentic in that approach. Now, I think there are some who maybe try to make a mark in a way that is self-serving, and that they really want something for that, or I think people see through that. So I think it's got to come with authenticity, but using your gifts in a fashion to impact others, and then looking for opportunities to do that. I think that's the easiest way to find those. And start making a list. Write down, start journaling, and I can promise in the course of a day there will be a lot of opportunity to do something of impact that will leave a mark.
So kind of what you're saying is, if you're looking to force your mark, it's not going to work. You're really going to create this facade of, I'm trying to make my mark, and everyone's just going to see through it that it's it's a selfish desire.
Yeah, that or you try too hard, and it's not. I just think these things come natural, and it can be little things. Came into this building this afternoon, and the manager here was bringing in a bundt cake, and I said, "Oh, that's nice." And she said, "I'm just getting a little pick-me-up for our team on a Friday afternoon." And so it's those little things like that, those fine details, something that she thought about. She's leaving a mark, and you think about it, where you really that mark becomes indelible is when it's done repeatedly over time. You may not be saving little kids from a burning building, that makes the headlines of the news, but bringing a bundt cake to your team, and then continuing to drip, and over the course of time, it becomes sustainable and really meaningful. So, I think there's thousands of ways to do that. So just got to be aware of them.
So how are we at Oconee State Bank creating that remarkable experience?
Well, I mean, my prayer and hope is just through things like I just mentioned with our manager here, but we want to extend that to the customer. And I think that we talk about how do we create remarkable for our customers, and I think by creating remarkable for them, we're making a mark in their life. But it can be it's everything from calling them by name. Maybe you remember their favorite soft drink, and have them in the fridge when they come by. Maybe it's something as simple as making sure that what I like to call frictionless service, where when they come in, they can get their job done without having a lot of friction. Our people are competent. They can get them in and out of the bank quickly. Our mobile applications, run well because everything today is moving towards the digital channels. So I don't think it's something that's major. Confetti doesn't fall from the ceilings, when they walk in. And, it's the little fine details every day that we want to continue to work on. And we're by no means perfect, but we want to continue to get better as time goes on and pay attention to those little small things like that.
Well, that's something that I've seen with Oconee State Bank. I mean, I was raised in Oconee County, so watching Oconee State Bank grow and even just kind of seeing it from a kid's perspective to now as an adult, it's really interesting because you've got all of these different people who work on your front lines who are greeting guests by name and talking to them about their families and their kids. And I was talking to someone the other day about it, and I was asking them why they loved Oconee State Bank so much. And they were like, it's so impactful for me to walk in and my banker ask me how my family's doing, or ask me how my mom's doing, who's been in the hospital for 6 weeks. Or it's a really crazy experience to do that because it's weird. You don't think your banker would know that, but they do, and they care about you. And that really changes the relationship from a transaction to one that's really impactful.
So you just named a number of things right there that are the small details that I was mentioning that leave a mark. So how are your mom and dad doing? How's your, sick aunt doing? Whatever those questions may be. It's really boils down to that banker knowing something personal about, the customers that we serve and taking the time to care. And it's small little things like that mean the most. So
yeah, it really changes a good business. It differentiates a good business from a great business, one that really cares about their consumer, not someone who's just focusing on the transaction. And we talk about creating a remarkable experience and having your team members invest in their customers, but how do you create a culture or even inspire that sort of commitment from your team?
Well, what you're referencing there is the team being engaged in their day-to-day activities, because when you're engaged, you're committed to your work and to your customers. And it's interesting, an interesting statistic is that 34, this is a statistic by Gallup, so a very reputable 2021 statistic, that only 34% of American workers are engaged in their job. And so that's a staggering stat. That's on average. We have about an 85% engagement rate at Oconee State Bank. And I think the key to that engagement, and therefore the commitment to each other, comes from connection, being connected to one another, and to view your job as a team member here for the good of the whole, and value your team members and work for them, and not just it be all about yourself. So an example of this is what University of Georgia has done with their football program. And when you go back and look at the 2000 UGA team, that was arguably the most talented team that University of Georgia has ever had. All 11 starters, those out there who are football fans will know this, all 11 starters went to the NFL. All 11 offensive starters went to the NFL. But that year they went 8-4 won 8 games, lost 4 games with all that talent. And when you look back at that, and those who are close to the program will tell you they were all playing for themselves. They were discombobulated. They were disjointed. They could care less about each other. It was more about what's in it for me. Forward to the 2021 national championship team, certainly a talented team. You can't win championships without talent. You can't be a great bank without having extraordinary talent, no question. But the difference in that 2000 team, who was more talented than the 2021 team, was the connectedness. And so serving on the FCA board with UGA, I've got a chance to get to know Coach Smart and Thomas Settles, a chaplain, and they'll both tell you that's the number one DNA trait, is the connection that the team has with each other. And then you take it a year later, back-to-back national champions, with a less talented team than the 2021 team, and won another national championship. And you'll hear both Thomas and Kirby talk a lot about it's because we're connected. We're playing for something bigger than ourselves. We're playing for each other. And so that means that they're fully engaged and fully committed. And so you take that to our bank. I think when you have a higher engagement rate, it's when you can create a sense of connectedness among all team members. And we're working diligently through a number of methods to infuse more connectedness within our team. Everything from small groups to, there's a number of things we have on the horizon to continue to build that connectedness and the connection with each other, which leads to engagement, which leads to commitment. So.
It's interesting that you brought that up. I was in a meeting today and someone brought up the statistic that or not really a statistic, just the fact that the 2 main reasons that people leave a job is, one, because they don't like their boss, which is not as relevant. But the other one is because they don't have a work friend. Mm-hmm. They don't have someone that they feel like they can confide in at work. Mm-hmm. And it really goes to show that that is such a big part of creating a community and mm-hmm. a remarkable culture, is having someone that you can feel safe around, or someone that you can feel like you can be yourself. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about inspiring your team to continue to grow that remarkable culture and live it out, it's really important to have those small groups and those people to show that they really do care.
Absolutely. You're it's more than about you, but you've got, when you get to know someone, and really know someone and know their history and know their family and get to know them, you build a level of trust and respect and mutual respect and trust that you're connected. So you're willing to, you don't want to let them down. Yeah. They don't want to let you down. And when you can build that level of connection with each other, what can be accomplished in terms of performance is unrivaled and unmatched. And I think that goes back to that culture we were talking about of high support. A connected team is what I mean, by support, is that everybody cares about each other. They're supporting each other, and that's not just about, how profitable can we be, but we have a high standard. And just like University of Georgia, they want to win ball games. They got to have a very high standard, but they're playing for something bigger than just their individual.
Yeah, and that's vital. We talk about the relationship with the customer. You need that trust and that feeling of being safe and known to trust someone with your money. And even then, trusting someone to give you good advice on what to do with your finances. Mm-hmm. And so as a bank, that's an extremely vital skill to have, as to really know your customer and to even build that relationship so that you have this level of trust where it's not that you're trying to push a product. You're really invested in this person's life. You're saying, hey, I know you and I know your family and I know this is the best solution for you. And if something's not a good solution, then you're able to help coach them out of it. Mm-hmm. It's a really good thing to have.
Yeah, I think you have to be honest and tell them, even if it's to our detriment, what's best for them. And when you do that, like you said, and then they'll trust and respect, and they'll continue to do business with us. But
a cool thing, it's really funny because business owners don't think about this a lot, but you might steer a client away from your product, but that relationship that you've now established of, oh, well, they actually care about my well-being, and they're saying, hey, this isn't necessarily the product I need, well, then they're going to send someone who does need your product to you because they now trust you. And you have it's a really unique experience to be able to say, like, to be able to help someone with a situation that doesn't necessarily benefit you, but you build that relationship with that person, and a relationship is worth so much more than the initial reward of whatever they signed up for, whatever service.
Oh, everything in life is about relationships. And you talk about trust. I think trust has two components to it. One component is certainly character. You want to be able to trust the individual to know that they're have your best interest in mind and things of that nature. But it's also competence, right? So if you're going to have, I just have laser eye surgery recently for a torn retina, the attached retina actually. And, the doctor I had that did the surgery certainly is of high character, and that's important to me. But if he were incompetent, would I want him touching my eyes? No way. And so same with people's money. I think they want someone who knows what they're doing and is highly competent, but who also has a high level of character. And I think those two things is what makes trust. I mean, you trust somebody because of those two things. I mean, they could have all the competence in the world and be a crook. Well, you don't want them as your banker.
Yeah.
You could have the best surgeon in the world, and they're shady. I mean, you don't want to have that either. You want both to really build that bond of trust.
So looking at those characteristics and the community which we serve in, what do you see for the future of this podcast?
Wow, it's like we talked about earlier. I think it's making those who are on our show the hero of the story, and to highlight those, whether it be a nonprofit, whether it be an individual, whether it be a company, to put them in the spotlight from a standpoint of really understanding what they've done to make their mark, in hopes that those who listen, begin to get ideas of how they can make their mark in their own respective companies and entities that they may run or be a part of. So that's really important.
We've talked a lot about leaders and leadership, especially within our community. So to you, what makes a good leader a great leader?
Yeah, obviously, good leaders have basic fundamentals. I think they're technically sound in their trade. They understand their trade. They're able to cast vision. They're able to, think strategically and see the future. I mean, all the things that you would normally, read in a leadership book. I mean, there's no one word necessarily that you can, that defines leadership. I guess John Maxwell mentioned influence is a word to describe leadership, but leadership is multifaceted. But I think if all those things exist, I mean, good leaders have to be talented, and they have to have followers. If you don't have followers, you're not a leader. So and that's just not followers because you're the boss. It's got to be followers because they want to follow. They have a desire to follow. But a great leader, I think the trait that differentiates really good leaders from a great leader is humility. I think great leaders are able to lead in such a way that that it's not about them. It's about the organization and what's best for the organization, and that if they were to leave for whatever reason, that organization would continue to thrive because they've set it up for success, and it doesn't hinge on one person. And I think it takes a level of true humility to make that happen. And Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, which is a classic, he talks about that, and it's called the Level 5 leader. And it's a leader who has all the characteristics of a good leader. I mean, everything that a good leader needs, you got to have all those skills. But they have a sense of humility. And believe it or not, those companies that he studied, all of them outperformed the stock market, like 2 times. I mean, they were higher. They had unbelievable performance, and that was a common characteristic. Was a level 5 leader that led with humility. And so I think that's really important.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, even watching you in Oconee State Bank, I mean, you're an incredible leader. Just the way that everyone at Oconee State Bank extremely respects you. I'm not saying that just to flatter you because we're on a podcast, but I mean, it's very real. I mean, you walk into a room and everyone in that room has so much respect for you because you've led so well, and you really do exude those characteristics that you're talking about. I mean, you're incredibly humble, and it helps to create and build this culture that wants to grow and build and thrive off of the remarkable experiences that you show.
Where's Selena? We need to give this man a really big raise.
I will take it. I will take that raise.
No, that's very flattering and kind of you to say, but it truly is though. What makes that easy is the team that's in place. I mean, when you have great teams in the respective areas that love what they do and they're very capable, it makes that part of the job, very, very easy. But I appreciate those kind words.
You need an award for that. Gets a compliment and immediately throws it back to his team.
No,
thank you so much, but my team.
No,
that's
incredible.
I
mean, it's kind of say, but at the same time, I really do feel that, I think if a leader is only as good as those that are around him or her. I mean, I think anyone will tell you that, and that's part of my job, right? Is if we don't have people in place that you're talking about what my day-to-day responsibilities are. I mean, that's a reflection on me. I mean, I had a person one time tell me, working for me, said, "My job is to keep you off the front page of the newspaper." We don't need bad press or because it all reflects back on me. So I could lose sleep at night thinking, "Oh my gosh!" But when you've got great people in the right positions, it really does make things easier. But
well, exactly. I mean, you're called a leader. You're someone who's you wouldn't be a leader without people to lead. You can't lead no one, and so you have to have that culture and that community and that team that you've built to lead. And it's important that team respects you and you respect your team. And I mean, it's incredible to watch you grow. And I mean, it's been awesome for me just to see and learn all about leadership from you, just because, I mean, it's not like it's hard to learn from you because you just exude leadership in such a really
well, I appreciate that. I've had some great examples in my life and career. And, I remember studying this, early on in my career and asking lots of questions. And, and I've had some examples in my career of those who are, who have not led with humility. And then I've had some who've led with beautiful humility. And I can remember one individual, Lawson Forrester. He's now passed away, but we used to call him Dr. Feelgood. And he said, "Why do y'all call me that?" And I said, "Because you're the one that can, you can come in and scold us or scold me or whatever and tell us everything we're doing wrong and make us feel so good about it." Because he led with humility. And it wasn't, I'm the boss and here's why you got to do it. It was, and so along the way, there's been some great folks in my life that I've just tried to model, and don't get it right. Trust me, don't get it right. Have a lot of flaws, but so do we all. And I think it's okay to fail. It's all right for our team members to fail if you're learning from the failures. And I think we have enough guardrails where there's not catastrophic failures that are going to take the bank. You got to be careful about those. But, I mean, if you do something one way and it doesn't work, okay, learn from it. If you keep making the same mistake over and over, that's probably a sign of incompetence. But if you learn from it and do something better, you grow, right? So
exactly. Mistakes are one of the greatest opportunities to learn from. And
no question.
It makes it to where you can really build that remarkable culture because you have perfect examples of where things have gone wrong, where you can learn from and continue. I mean, if you don't learn from your mistakes, like you just said, it's incompetence. But if you do learn from your mistakes, you build a really firm foundation without the cracks.
Yep.
It's incredible. So kind of looking towards the future of this podcast and looking towards the future of Oconee State Bank, what would be your dream? Like to see this podcast continues going, but to see how it impacts the community.
Thing about, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. And so I think every podcast, if we can truly highlight and do our best work to bring in those individuals who are making their mark, and we highlight those, and we continue to repetitively do that over a period of time, I think that is what we're looking to do, because that in turn creates, it's like the multiplication effect we talked about. It continues to create that. So that'd be my dream, to see that happen.
And really, my last question for you, kind of going off of that, is what can people expect to learn from this podcast?
Well, I hope that they learn that, that by taking an intentional approach to every day being aware of their daily duties during the course of a day, being aware intentionally of how they can make a mark on the lives of others, whether it be people that they work with, that they work for, that they manage or supervise, whether it be customers, whether it be friends at church or school or, civic club, wherever it may be, taking the time to be intentional about making a mark in the lives of other people in a positive way. So that much like your teacher and my teacher and others, Lawson Forrester and others that we've talked about, that we're talking about them for years to come. And so my hope is that people pick up on that and begin to, to do that themselves on a daily basis. And I could do a better job at that. We all can. So this podcast makes me more aware.
All right, well, Neil, thank you so much for joining me and talking to me a lot about leadership and the future of this podcast, and really just what it means to make you remarkable. I'm super excited for the rest of this podcast. And for everyone listening, make sure you follow along and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app, or follow us on social media at Oconee State Bank for more updates about our podcast. And tune in every Wednesday for our next episode. See you soon.